friends, we're back. It's We're All Fine. I'm Holly.
I'm Carley.
We're so glad you guys are here. We are shaking it up a little bit today because, you know what? Carley and I are feeling a little weird and unusual, so we're going to be sharing some stories that are a little weird and unusual. Ooh. I mean, who knows, like, how accurate this stuff is, but you know what? I like talking about it because everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story. So I'm just going to jump right in. You up for that, Carley?
I'm ready. No toes in the water. Jumping in. Cannonball. Deep end. Ready.
Okay, let's just do it. Okay, so what I'm going to start with, this is from someone with the screen name Rob Putnam 80. He wrote on BuzzFeed, "As a child, I had many missing time experiences. Often in the middle of the night, I'd find myself in the basement and very scared. Nearly always, this was accompanied by images or feelings of Armageddon or something like it. I used to write it off as a combination of bad dreams and sleepwalking, except that it happened twice in broad daylight when I was wide awake. The worst was on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Several of us were melting dry ice in a puddle at our court entrance. Suddenly, we were overwhelmed with the urge to run across the street and into the woods. I don't remember if someone suggested it or if we all thought of it at the same time. Whatever the case, it felt like the best idea I'd ever heard. We began to run across the street, and that's the last thing I remember. The next thing I knew, I was at home about an hour later crying and very scared. To this day, I have no idea what happened in that missing hour. It remains a haunting mystery for me." So, if he's having these visions of catastrophes, did any catastrophes occur? Like, do we have any follow-up on that?
Right.
Was there something that would happen, like, every time he would disappear for an hour or his mind went blank? You know, was he sore in different places because of, alien probing? I'm just saying, like, there's...
Right. There's more information needed. There's more information needed. This feels like a grainy picture, and we're all just having to figure out what it is. Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster kind of stuff. Like,
Right.
we don't have enough. Are there accounts of the children he was with? Did he ever ask the children he was with?
Right.
There seems to be a lot of space for reasonable explanation.
Well, I figured on this path of missing time, let's see. This one is from screen name Shanna Moon. She says, "When I was 8 or 9, my mom, sister, cousin, and I were driving from Tucson, Arizona to Salt Lake City and lost about 6 hours of the drive. Like, it was early afternoon and suddenly the sun was setting and the tape, it was the late 80s, early 90s, was on the other side as if it had been looping for hours. We were all singing one song at the top of our lungs, and then it felt as if we'd come out of a haze and the song was different and no one was singing. And we were definitely hours down the road from where we had started singing. No one was saying anything till my cousin suddenly said, 'Did I fall asleep or did time go wonky?' To this day, the remaining 3 of us have no idea what happened, and I think about it from time to time." When I first was looking at that, I thought about, there's this thing, self-hypnosis when you're driving. If anybody's ever had that feeling where they're like driving to work, like a path that they take so regularly, and then they get to their destination and they're like, how did I get here?
Right.
So they prove it's a form of self-hypnosis when we are doing something we've done so many times, that repetitive piece, that it actually kind of puts us in that hypnotic state, which is why we won't remember. But 6 hours?
That's a long time. I don't know. My brain goes to all of my hippy-dippy spiritual stuff where I'm like, time is a concept and we shouldn't be held to, and maybe you were just so lost in a moment, or, all of a sudden, because we've all had, time flies when you're having fun, right? Like, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're just having the best day of your life and all of a sudden it's bedtime. Maybe it can be in those moments of, whoa, 6 hours just passed by and we were having a great time, but now no one knows where any of it went. So I had something similar to that when I was sick one day as a kid, and my mom always was working really hard. She was a teacher, and for a lot of the time that I was sick as a child, I went to work with her. and would just hide under her desk with like
Mhm.
a blanket and a VHS. We had a portable VHS TV.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, it was
That's
super.
very fancy.
It was very fancy. So I had my little bag of VHS tapes and my portable TV, and I would just watch movies all day under her desk. There was this one day where my mom actually was able to take the day off, which was new and exciting and fun. And it was 7 a.m. when I was up and awake. And my mom's favorite TV show was MASH,
Mhm.
and I still love that show. I kid you not, it felt like we watched one episode, even though we had watched multiple throughout the day, but these hour-long episodes felt like they were seconds. Gone within seconds. It was opening credits, ending. Opening, ending is what it felt like. And all of a sudden, it was 9 o'clock at night. And it was the best day ever. It was my favorite sick day. And it was so strange. It was as if it was as if I had reached my hand out to try to grab time, I was never going to be able to slow it down. So
Oh.
I get that feeling of where the hell did time go? There's no way that we have lived a 10-hour day or 8 hours within this short span of time. We weren't looking at the clock, but all of a sudden looked outside and it was nighttime.
He did say too that they were driving through Arizona, and I don't know if you've heard about like the Sedona vortexes.
No, tell me all about
It's
this.
and it's actually even on the like Visit Sedona website. They talk about it where they're like these 7 vortexes in Sedona where the rock formations and the earth sort of emanate different energy. And I don't know if it's different rates of energy or I'm not entirely sure. But there are
Yeah.
several different spots where they say it's like great for meditation and healing and all this kind of stuff because it's a space where energy sort of radiates differently.
Well, okay. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. So I've spent quite a bit of time in Sedona. My grandparents lived in Tucson for most of my life, and we would go over the summers and spend time in Sedona, and I loved that place. And it felt like a home that I had never known, but that I was like, oh, this place is amazing. And so that would make a lot of sense. That actually makes a lot of sense because it felt like a very beautiful energy, a very tranquil space. And if there are these like super inexplicable vortexes, that makes a lot of sense. It's like a smaller version of the Bermuda Triangle,
Well, I mean,
where
it's been, and they described it as like a Stonehenge that has yet to be built.
that is so cool though.
But on the other hand, all of these stories deal with people who are like when they're children. And
Yeah.
kids are weird. Like, they're just, I've had the most strange and unusual things happen with my kiddos, really just one kid in particular. So, my son,
Hmm.
he's just, when he was younger, I used to love metaphysical fairs. Wouldn't do much there
Me,
except for wander around. But
me
even
too.
as a baby, I'd have him in a stroller, and I would have people just come up to me and stop me and go, "He's very special. You should know that." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, he is special." And they were like, "No,
Me.
he's special." And I went, "Oh, okay." And then as he's a little bit older, like I think at the time he was like 2, we're out all on the deck, me and my husband and our 2 best friends, and we're just all just having a like dinner, right, in the evening time. And all of a sudden my son just stands up on the chair that he's sitting in and goes, "The darkness is coming." And we were like, "What?" And I kid you not, it's not 10 seconds later, full blackout in the neighborhood. Just poof, like the whole neighborhood goes dark. And we all freeze. And we look at my son, and my friend Angel looks at him and he goes, "Do you see dead people?" And then, of course, we all started cracking up because, my son's 2. He's like, "What?" And we're all dying. But he would do stuff like that that was just very spooky. And he
Yep.
had, I guess they're not really night terrors, but he would talk in his sleep a lot as a little kid, which I know kids do so
Yeah.
much when they're younger. But the way he would do it is I would go into his room because I'd hear noise and I'd go in and he's sitting up and his eyes are open and he's just talking. But he would recognize my presence. So I'd walk in and I'd be like, "Hey, buddy, how are you doing?" And he wouldn't look at me. He'd go, I know she is, but I won't tell her." "Okay."
Mm.
And then just starts laughing and looks at me and goes, "Hi, mommy." him just talking to his invisible friend in the middle of the night and still recognizing that I was in the room
Right.
was terrifying.
That is terrifying. My daughter had one imaginary friend for a while, and it was very. So I'll preface with there are some belief systems that say that children are closer to the veil because their life has been so short.
Sure.
So like the veil to afterlife, right? And so some people believe that imaginary friends are actually spirits or ancestors or guardians. And I love that idea. But I didn't really buy into it all the way until I had mine. Because she was probably about two and a half, and all of a sudden she was playing with this quote unquote imaginary friend. And they would hang out all the time. She'd talk to him. She would try to share toys with him. But it was clear that there was a conversation happening all the time. It wasn't one-sided. You could tell that she felt as though she was listening and hearing and seeing this person. And one day her and I were having dinner and she tells me like I asked about her friend and I wish I could remember his name now, but I can't. And she says, well, someone hurt him. And I said, well, who hurt him, baby? And she says, I don't know, but he got hurt in a tree. And I said, oh, well, sometimes boo-boos happen in trees because she was little, making it age appropriate.
Sure. Yeah.
And she goes, yeah, he was in Florida. And I was like, how do you know what Florida is? Like, he's from Florida. And she said, yeah, he's from Florida. And I was like, oh, okay, tell me everything about him. Because at this point, she's getting very specific with information that I don't know how
Sure.
she would know any of this. And she goes, well, he was 13. He was 13 until he was able to come and play with me. And then she gives me a last name. And again, I don't remember his name and I wish I could. So I type in this name into Google and like, I kid you not, there was a 13-year-old boy in Florida who had been hung in a tree.
Hung in a tree?
He was hung in a tree. So he got hurt in a tree. And I'm researching about all of this. He was 13, his first and last name. And like, you cannot tell me that is you cannot tell me that is coincidence. You cannot. I had goosebumps. I had chills. I talked to my mom about it. I was like, I don't know what is going on with this. And then one day, my daughter was very, very sad. And she was just kind of weepy that day. And I asked her, I was like, baby, what is wrong? And I think his name was David or Daniel. And she looks up at me, tears in her little eyes, and she goes, Daniel went home. He can't play with me anymore.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, oh, baby, why can't, like, what do you mean he went home? And she said, he said he's okay. So he went home. We said goodbye. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
who are you, you incredible little being, you incredible little soul?
So you're so like, I love how you embrace that. And you're like, you sweet, wonderful. I would be like, Sage. Sage the whole space.
There's the house.
Everybody, sage it. But I
Well,
mean, I've heard these stories of kids. I guess it's like around that age, right? Have you heard about the past lives
mm-hmm,
thing with kids?
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so they, you know, this idea, like for those who don't know that, there's this theory that a lot of kids will remember their past life up until I guess it like disappears. Like they stop remembering at like 4 or 5, I guess, is where they find that memories disappear. But there's actually an entire school of study on it at a major university
Mm.
about this concept. And kids remember really specific details, they remember whole lives, and they speak about it as if I was that person. So that's how they
Mm-hmm.
say it. Not they, but I.
Absolutely. There was one day we were driving. I'm not raising my child in a church or in a faith. I hope that she finds a creator organically if that is her choice. But one day we were driving in the car during summer and church bells were going. And she goes, I love church bells. I used to go to church. I was like, when did you used to go to church, baby? And she goes, when I look different. Like, okay. And that was it. Like, that was as much as she gave. But it was very much matter of fact. When I was different, when I heard him, and I was like, okay, sure. She doesn't speak like that anymore. I I don't know. Every psychic I've gone to, every medium I've gone to, I've never brought my child, but they have always told me that she is an indigo baby, which means that she sees more than most. She feels more than most. She's very tapped into her like top chakra, and that she is special, just like you at the metaphysical fair. And like every child's special, every child has gifts. My child, there was one night, I don't remember how old she was. She was still a little pumpkin, but she woke up in the middle of the night screaming and crying about my grandparents, Nana. She calls them Nana and Baba, screaming, "They're not okay. They're not okay. We have to go get them. We have to go get them." I'm like, "Baby, it's the middle of the night. Like, you just had a bad dream. Like, you're okay. Go to bed." The next morning, my mom calls me and goes, "Whew, last night was crazy. Your grandparents woke up in the middle of the night and they didn't feel well with headaches and nausea, and they walked out of the house and their alarm was going off for, is it carbon monoxide or dioxide? I don't remember.
Yeah, carbon monoxide.
Carbon monoxide, and they had a leak or however that works that night in their home and had to have people come out and like clear it out and had to do a
Oh
bunch
my
of stuff.
gosh.
Mhm. Mhm. Same night. So like you can't tell me that stuff is coincidence. I
That's
don't
wild.
I don't know how far my belief is in all of those things. I'm going through a really heavy belief transitional phase in my life currently. But like you can't, these aren't coincidences. There's no way. How? How was it that the world just, everything is interconnected. Everything is connected. We are all part of one universe, all my hippy dippy stuff. So everything is connected, and I believe there are signs, and I believe there are spirits that are linger with unfinished business.
Well, I
But
know my
how's that?
mom always told me her story of her grandmother passing. She was actually at a convention. She's in a hotel, convention's middle of the night, and she's there with my birth father, and she just feels the bed start shaking,
Hmm.
and she's like, "Is it a earthquake?" But like he's not waking up, so she just feels compelled to get out of the bed, like the bed is shaking her out of the bed, and she feels compelled to go over to the writing desk, and she just sits at the writing desk, picks up a pen and puts it to paper, and she's like about ready to just start writing stuff. She has no idea what, and she flipped out, threw the pen, and dove back into bed. Her grandmother, who she was super super tight with, had passed that night, and she felt like that was her grandmother trying to speak to her. And her grandmother was also very like super spiritual and not religious, very spiritual.
Mhm.
And that would make sense. But my mom was always so terrified of that stuff that unfortunately, like, it happened to her a lot and she hated it.
They say that energy never dies, right? And we're basically all energy. So it makes sense to me that energy just continues going.
Sure.
And so my grandfather, super God-fearing man, very religious, does not believe in supernatural thing, or didn't believe in supernatural or anything like that. And him and my grandmother went to Ireland and did a European backpacking thing, and they were in a castle. And my grandfather woke up in the middle of the night to a woman like grabbing his toe. And
Oh,
she was standing at the edge of the bed. And he said it felt like this out of body experience where he could see himself laying in the bed. He could see the woman. He could see my grandmother next to him in the bed. And this woman clearly needed help, but couldn't tell him what she needed. So he was very flustered. He was trying to help her. And then he looked away for a moment and she was gone. And so the next morning at breakfast, they're talking about it, and someone from the castle tells him, "Oh, there was a woman, and she was young, and the woman that he saw was very young, and she was killed in the castle, and she comes to men more often than women, and we don't know why, but every man has said she clearly was in distress, clearly needed help, but never is able to convey what she needs."
oh
And
my
so from
gosh.
that day forward, he would say, I'm a man of God, but I believe in spirits.
I like that. But and that always goes in. But
hmm And so changed his outlook on what is and what isn't.
oh
And
yeah. Did I ever tell you that I went to school at a haunted on a haunted campus?
I think so, but I'm not gonna lie to you. I remember hearing something about a haunted, maybe like dorm area,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but I was drinking at the time. This was at a
Yeah,
bar that we had this conversation, so you can remind
yeah,
me.
that makes sense. The college that I went to, university that I went to, was in Missouri, and it was super old. Like, I think that the the school at that point was like 150 years old, maybe more, and it was a stop on the Underground Railroad. It
Wow.
originally started as a women's college, like educating women only, but the founder would also educate those who were not allowed to get an education. So,
Mm,
Native Americans, people of color, and she would do it in secret on, like, at the site.
mm,
So
beautiful.
it had only happened, I think, maybe in the 70s, 80s, maybe, that they started, maybe even later than that. It might have been like late 80s that they started allowing men to go to this college, that it became co ed. So when I go to the school, the dorm that they put me in is the oldest dorm on the campus, which, let me tell you something, an old dorm in Missouri. It's not, it's not
No,
great, my
that's
friend.
a that
It's
sounds
like,
sounds spooky.
well, it's not spooky. It's no air conditioning in the middle
Oh,
of that kind of summer.
oh,
Like,
sweaty,
not
sweaty and
enough.
spooky.
Gross, yeah. So they put me in this original dorm. I'm also put in the founder's suite. So this was where she lived on campus, and it was a suite. There were 5 of us that were put in there. It's divided up into 2 rooms with like a little hallway in between. And, we were told when we got there, like, the ghost stories of the space. And I'm like, yeah, 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 whatever. Like, I see what you're doing with the freshmen. That's fine.
Right.
But we discovered certain things. So this university had curfews for men and women. So, like, men could only be in the women's dorms until like 10 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
and vice versa. In the times that we had people past curfew, and I'm not saying that it happened terribly often, but like when they were in there past curfew, it never failed. The blinds would immediately flip up. The stereo would turn on by itself at full volume, like, turning all of us deaf. At one point, I had a computer fall off the desk, which, by the way, this is like late 90s, early 2000s. Those computers were like 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
We constantly, bathroom sinks, the handles would turn by themselves and the water would come on. Just wild stuff. And we had heard, so I got to witness all of that. So we started learning, like, we would tell our male friends, we were like, yeah, you gotta go. You gotta leave. Like, Mary Sibley is not cool with you being here.
Yeah.
And I,
9:57. Get your shoes, Kevin. We gotta go.
get the fuck out, Kevin. I don't want to deal with the stereo situation.
Game of Scrabble is not that riveting. Go.
Go. Scrabble. Um, there were rumors that they had tried to turn it into a co-ed dorm, like that was what they had tried to do at one point, but it never
Mhm.
worked out because horrible accidents just kept happening to all the men in the dorm. So, like, the showers would turn on scalding hot just for them, or things would fly at them. I mean, just like horrible things. So
Mm.
that did not go over well. But it was, I mean, we had a cemetery directly behind the dorm. I don't mean like across the street. I mean, like, you
Yeah.
walked out the back door and, like, boop, there's a cemetery.
No.
So, I mean, the library used to be a church. So there were floors that were blocked off. That's kind of, that was just where I went to school. It was super, super weird. So, you know, I'm not, I'm not against all of the spiritual stuff. I know that it's out there. I 100% believe what you're talking about with energy and that kind of thing. But in general, I like to look and see if there's like an easy explanation before I jump to the other stuff.
Oh, definitely. Oh, for sure. I don't know. I really hope that all of those like ghost finding TV shows eventually actually find one. It's been 18
Oh,
seasons and
God.
they've never been lucky, you know.
Those ghost finding TV shows, they're all such douche canoes. Like, I
Oh, all of
just,
them.
ugh.
They all wear ridiculous lightning bolt tattoo or shirt, t-shirt, like weird spiky hair, and they talk to you like this, as if
Right?
you can't keep a normal speech pattern when talking about ghosts. Like, get out of here. Get out of here.
Well, I actually, using that as our focus there, I've got a great affirmation. If you can believe it, I've got a ghosty affirmation.
love ghosts. Okay, go.
Here we go. I mean, it's not ghosty so much as it is us looking at these ghosty stories. Changing my mind is a strength, not a weakness. Changing my mind is a strength, not a weakness. So, for those of you who are listening to the story and going, man, did they get high before doing this show? I can tell you, probably not. And that's the best I can do. You know, you can when you hear these stories, you can totally believe it. You can totally think we're full of crap, or that the other people are full of crap. It's fine, but also know, changing your mind is a sign of strength, not of weakness.
Absolutely. Well, and if you've encountered anything extraterrestrial, I would love to do an episode about aliens because, unpopular opinion, I don't think I believe in them, but I'm easily swayed potentially. But if you've had any sort of ghosty, paranormal experiences, like tell us on Instagram, Facebook, message us if you want us to share what you've had, because we can't be the only ones. There's no way. I know better.
We'd love that. You can email us at we'reallfinepodcast@gmail. We're on We're All Fine Podcast at Instagram. We're All Fine Podcast on Facebook. It's pretty easy to find us. Send us some messages. We would love to hear your stories.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
Bye.